Right, folks, welcome to Episode 2 of Face Friel. I'm delighted to be joined by professional wrestler, I hope I'm saying this right, Halfdän, who has I'm very, very thankful that he's agreed to come on and have a conversation with us, and we'll discuss his sort of background, his career, and the current state of professional wrestling. So I'll hand over to you, Halfdan. Have I said that right?
Yep, you haven't eaten it. Yeah,
Perfect,
it's half
excellent.
done. So it is.
So yeah, so why don't Halfdan? Why don't we yeah? Do you want to give us a bit of background on who you are, what you do, and what your sort of I don't know a professional wrestling career looks like, and how you got into the business?
Yeah, so my full name, well, my regular everyday name is Joe, but I go by Halfdan when I'm wrestling. Quite a Viking gimmick, so it is. But I got into professional wrestling when I was really, really young. I've always loved professional wrestling. Always watched WWE, always watched TNA and that growing up. And then you sort of get to that age where it isn't cool anymore. And then when I got to about 19 or so, I started watching it again and fell in love with it again. So I actually went and saw a local show in my hometown, and one of the guys there had a T-shirt on for the dojo that I wrestle with now, and I just got in contact with them, and they said to come down, and I've been training ever since. So I've been training for about 2.5 to 3 years now, and I've done quite a lot of shows locally in that. I've got one next weekend, and then I'm sort of booked out to do shows in Malone and Belfast each month. And then I've been to Portugal and that to do shows with CTW and that. And then hopefully I'm getting out to Scotland to work with Andy Roberts and that, and do a couple of holiday shows over there and that. So it's been pretty wild,
Mhm.
but I would recommend it for anyone, honestly. I mean, I've met some great people, I've got some great connections, and I can't thank everyone enough for their patience, for everything that they do for me, especially the guys down at the dojo.
Yeah, so that's very good. You mentioned there you got back into it around 19. So can I ask what age are you at the moment?
26, 26.
26,
Yep,
okay, so same as myself. And
yep,
what, so it was about what, you were about 23 probably when you started to, so that gap between 19 and 23, was there any aspirations, or were you just sort of getting back in, following it, or what happened then between that time frame?
Well, I originally did a degree in performing arts in the hopes of going and doing wrestling,
Yes.
basically. And there was a company locally here, but it got shut down for whatever reason, so I couldn't find anything, basically. And then I just sort of got a job in the civil service and just sort of watched wrestling in the hopes of doing it one day. And then when I went to that local show, that's where I found one of the guys there, Didi. He had a T-shirt on of the dojo, and I was like, I need to do this. I want to do it, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, no, excellent. And sort of at that age of 19, it was interesting you said there that we all go through a phase where it's not cool anymore. You feel almost a bit embarrassed. It's a bit of a taboo subject, I
Yeah.
suppose, depending on what age you get to. But what sort of got back into it at 19? Because I'm just thinking from my own perspective, I probably dipped out around 2010. So I think
Mm.
we would have been about. So we born 98. Would I be right? Right,
99.
99. So you're a year younger. So yeah, we would have been about 12, I suppose, at
Yeah.
that time. And I would have got back into it around 18, 19.
Yeah.
Just kind of the stuff of the Bullet Club, New Japan, and sort of them things. Was there anything in particular sort of got you back into following it as a fan?
It was actually for my birthday that year. I think I can't remember if it was my mum or my brother actually got me tickets to go see the one that well WWE in Belfast, and it was more so like a look back on older times. And I remember watching them doing it and being like, oh, these are all people that I haven't really heard of before, so I'm going to do a bit of research on it. And it was on the Road to WrestleMania tour.
Mhm.
So I then decided to tune into WrestleMania, and I think it was, I might be wrong on this, maybe I was younger, but it was the WrestleMania where Seth Rollins was facing Randy Orton, and he goes for the curb stomp, and he
Yeah.
catches him with the RKO in midair, and
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
That's what I'll
that's
take.
cool. That's far too cool to not be, like, to not watch this again, so I remember I got into it after that. And then there's been times where I dip in and out. I mainly watch WWE. The amount of wrestling product nowadays is great, but I mean you can't keep up with it all.
No, absolutely. Like I think so I suppose the recent big stuff for people, maybe listeners who don't know, has been the move for WWE to go onto Netflix.
Yeah,
So it is a lot more accessible now than it's ever been, just
yeah,
naturally enough with the internet. But I've started to get more, I don't know what the right word I'm looking for, meticulous, or I've started to follow it more closely. So I
mm,
pretty much watch all the live or the shows anyways.
mm,
And if you're doing that, that's like 6 hours of product a week,
yeah,
and it's just it's there's so much. Like I certainly couldn't watch. I'm a big football fan too.
yeah,
I couldn't watch 6 hours of football. It's like, you know what I
yeah,
mean. So, yeah, as you say, like it's WWE, I suppose, is the conglomerate at the
yeah.
minute, and what. Why don't we just? No, you were going to say something there. Sorry.
I was going to say that that's sort of the goal that you aim for. Obviously, is WWE. Obviously, you have the likes of AEW and that nowadays, but I genuinely would not have the time to watch it. There's some guys in my that I would wrestle with that just do nothing but watch wrestling and stuff. But
Mhm.
when you've got like a house and you've got like, I mean, our fence blew down in the most recent storm and everything, and you've got things like that and all to repair. It's like, mate, I don't have the time to sit up to like 2 in the morning every night
Mm.
watching AEW and then NXT the next night, and then you've got SmackDown on a Friday, and then if you want to watch anything locally like OTT or that, you've got to, you know, get onto their website and stuff to watch their pay-per-views and that. And it's like it is really good though. I mean, it's more accessible than ever, and my nephew who wouldn't be into any sort of wrestling and that or any sort of violence or whatever, he comes to each of my shows now. He watches all the WWE live events and that, and it's cooler than ever, mate. Especially when you have The
Yeah.
Rock coming back and John Cena and beating up Cody Rhodes and that. It's like, this is the time
Yeah.
to be a wrestling fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and listen, I think we can go into that now a little bit. That's again for anyone who's not maybe as big a wrestling fan. That's been the big major sort of news at the moment is basically John Cena turning heel, which is just it was unbelievable. It's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
It hasn't quite sunk in, but what's your thoughts on that? We, I suppose, were coming up watching wrestling. John Cena was the guy. Like, I remember my first wrestling DVD was Armageddon 2004. He was feuding with Carlito at the time,
Yeah.
and this is sort of the lead into WrestleMania 21, where he won his first world title. So that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Over 20 years now. What's your thoughts on that, and how did you react to the stuff that's been happening lately?
I I mean, the adult in me is very, very happy with it because it's something that we've all wanted to see for a while. But then the child inside of me died when you see like the epitome of a hero finally turn into a bad guy.
Yeah.
I originally I remember there was a lot of times where John Cena was getting those, you know, John Cena sucks chance and everything, and I always thought there was a slight chance of it happening there. But I never would have expected it. I think it's the best thing the company's done in a very long time. So it is. I mean, if you go back and watch the crowd reactions and stuff, I mean, that place erupted when he booted him in the balls. Like, everybody was like, "This cannot be happening." Everybody thought it was a dream. It was like Taker losing the streak. Nobody thought it was real.
Yeah.
And then you wake up the next day, and you see it again and again. You go, "Oh, this is peak entertainment."
Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. I think it's one of them things. I suppose like people have always wanted it, but
Yeah.
now that it happened, we still can't believe that it's actually happened. It's
Yeah, it's
just,
definitely. I think it was a lot more difficult when it was still in that sort of PG era esque. But then I know, like when you have The Rock coming back and using a belt and beating the crap out of Cody Rhodes at the last WrestleMania and calling them all the names under the sun and stuff, it's the perfect time to do it. I think.
yeah, absolutely. And I suppose in the build up, like things have been a bit, I don't know, uncertain, just because of what happened at the Royal Rumble and the way it sort of went. It didn't look like there was going to be a clear story, but now it's like, the payoff's going to be amazing,
Yeah.
moving forward, like, so, no, it should be really, really good. Excuse me. So yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how things play out now over the next couple of months, and I suppose essentially the next year
Yeah.
being John Cena's final year. Um, so yeah, no, really exciting stuff. So what about the current state of wrestling at the moment? What other things? What's your sort of views on it? Because the things that I've been thinking about lately, is this new launch of Glow. I'm not sure how much you know about that, but or Evolve. Sorry, I didn't say
Mhm.
Glow. Evolve, and it seems that like the WWE universe is expanding, and obviously, as someone who works on the independent circuit,
Mhm.
it feels like they're getting a stronger hold of these independent circuits. Um, what's your sort of thoughts on that? Because I'd be interested to hear the perspective of an independent wrestler. Do you think this is positive, or do you think it's sort of, I don't know, watering down the product? I'm not.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it has its pros and cons. Obviously, the pros is that there's more eyes on WWE and WWE product than ever. And I think there's maybe you could see it as a higher chance of getting noticed by somebody in the WWE. Of course, then it means that they have more of a grasp over that independent scene, and I think the partnership with TNA is great. But and I've seen them, reach out to the likes of OTT for, a couple of guys and whatever. But I mean, it's like everything really. If it becomes too franchised, it can water down the product. I don't think it's reached that yet, and I hope it doesn't. But it is great to see them, doing things like Evolve and that, where it is really, really pushing that independent scene and getting more eyes on independent wrestling. I mean, in my hometown and whatever, my show next weekend is in my hometown, and there's still plenty of people who'd be like, why would I go watch wrestling? And then the likes of WWE and that I think has a real big impact on it, where they show those up and coming guys, and they're like, oh, well maybe we might see that sort of style of wrestling at independent shows. And don't get me wrong, sometimes you get great independent shows, and sometimes you get absolutely crap independent shows, and I've been
Hmm.
on both sides of it. But I think it's overall good. Of course, you've got the red tape at WWE, which is a bit of a nightmare. But I mean, I
Yeah,
haven't reached that level yet. So
yeah. Oh well, listen, never say never, you know.
absolutely, mate. That's the goal.
And so where are you based at the moment?
I'm in Newton Ards, so
Newton Ards,
it's
okay.
about 10 miles outside of Belfast. So
Yeah.
it is. But a lot of my shows and that I would do would be in Belfast, and then I'm working with another company to do one in Ards here, and then we would have quite a good relationship with CTW in Portugal. So it's mostly going between Belfast, Portugal, and then hopefully I'm adding Scotland into that. So
Yeah. And what's sort of the scene now within the in Northern Ireland and within Ireland? What's sort of the scene like, the pitfalls? What sort of can you give us an overview of that?
yeah, so the main company that I wrestle for is NIPW. So it is. Recently, we've been doing a lot of shows in our dojo, so it's got a seating capacity of maybe about 60 or so, which is quite small. And I remember going out to Portugal for the first time, and it was a completely different gravy. So it was out the back of a brewery basically. So
Okay.
it was in a car park, ring set up, great weather, everyone on the beers, and then just people beating each other up. Basically, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But we have now progressed into doing monthly shows at Malone Rugby Club, which has a seating capacity of about 170. So you're tripling your audience basically there.
Yeah.
So I know that NIPW's on the rise, and there's loads and loads of great wrestlers in NIPW. Brandon Jenkins is one of them, Dee Dee Crooks, Sage Valentine, to name a few. And then we would have a couple of other companies. So I know that there's like Titanic Wrestling. I've worked with a couple of their guys on
Mhm.
NIPW, but I haven't been on their shows and that. And then I know there's sort of one up in that Donegal region, CAW, Complete
Yeah.
Anarchy Wrestling, that
That's right.
I'm hopefully, well, I've been in talks with those guys to hopefully get on a show. And then there's Stay True Wrestling as well, which I've been in contact with to get a couple of shows done there. So it is on the rise, and I think the likes of NIPW getting monthly shows in Malone and that. I know it doesn't seem like much performing in front of 170 to 80 people, but I mean it makes a real big difference. The more eyes that you get on the product, the better. I think OTT are doing, I think it's shows every maybe 2 weeks or a month,
Mhm.
and they're going, basically all around the island. So they are. I know that I think they're maybe in Drogheda next, doing like an Ireland versus England thing.
Okay.
And then I think they're maybe back in the Europa and stuff. But I think OTT especially is really on the rise, which is great to see. I mean, so I used to be really worried about telling people that I was a wrestler. Like, oh yeah, I like to dress up at the weekends as a Viking and beat up other people. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, I'm a wrestler. That's great. I get to
Yeah.
travel the world, and I get to travel all over the island, meeting cool people, and making kids' days or ruining kids' days. Making an impact on people. That's what matters.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like I think that's something that, I think there are loads of wrestling fans within Ireland,
Mhm.
and there probably is like a lot of people who would like to pursue it,
Mhm.
but again, this idea of it being a taboo
Yeah.
topic and
Yeah.
subject, how did you overcome that? I know you were saying there that you were a bit apprehensive about
Mhm.
telling people you were
Yeah.
pursuing this, and you've got quite a unique gimmick as well in the sense that you could leave yourself in a vulnerable
Yeah.
position. How did you sort of overcome that and embrace it, and just is it a maturity thing or?
Yeah, I think maturity definitely plays a big part of it, because I remember when I was in doing my degree and that, I was like, yeah, oh, there's absolutely nothing wrong with wrestling. And then, when I started, I think it was maybe when I started watching it again, you saw some of the gimmicks, especially around that time where it was still quite PG, and you thought, I don't really want to be showing people that, this is what I'll be doing. But I think especially recently, it's what, I mean, everyone knows The Rock, everyone loves The Rock, and then you go, yeah, I'm doing what The Rock's doing, and people go, oh right, okay, totally get that. I mean, my partner in that, she, first of all, she's really supportive and that, but I mean, she wouldn't watch any sort of wrestling and that before we met, and now she's at every show and she loves it. And I think it's more as well like family and friends giving you that confidence boost. And when you're in the dojo, you're surrounded by other people doing the exact same thing, so you build that confidence. And then once you do a couple of shows, and you get kids coming up to you and stuff, it's like, oh, it's actually a pretty cool career.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Like, I think when you put it like that, yeah, it does make sense. I like that one. Just I'm doing what The Rock does.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very good.
Maybe without the millions and millions of pounds,
Yeah,
unfortunately. I
yeah.
mean,
We don't have
one
to
of those.
mention that. We don't have to mention that. Someday, someday.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with this gimmick? Sort of Viking gimmick. Pretty cool name as well. Be interested to hear what the origins of that are.
Well, I was originally wanting to do like a, when I say paranormal gimmick, I mean more along the lines of Bray Wyatt, Kane, and whatever. But I think with those sort of gimmicks, you really have to keep the kayfabe up. Like, and
Mhm.
I noticed after the first like dojo shows and that I've been to, afterwards, because it's mainly just family, friends, and stuff. People would go out after the shows and that, and just sort of talk away normally. And then it's like, well, I don't really want to, just bugger off basically after the show and not see anyone or talk to anyone. So I decided to change the gimmick up, and then I said on that Viking one, mainly just because a lot of people told me that I sort of had that look, so I had that going for me. And then I remember when I was coming up with a name, I was like, I can't go something full Danish just in case, or full
Yeah.
Scandinavian just in case people ask me. And then, I was doing research on different names. A lot of them sounded really cool. And then I come across Halfdän, which means half Danish. So now I can always just say, oh, no, 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 no. My ancestors are Danish.
Okay, yeah.
I'm Irish, so that's why I've gone for Halfdän. But I remember when I was buying the gear and stuff, and it's quite weird as well because I wouldn't wrestle in quite traditional, wrestling gear. I don't have spandex. I don't have, the tight shorts or anything that you see on some guys or anything like that. I wrestle in full, Viking regalia, basically big baggy trousers. The only thing wrestling based is the boots. I've got my knee pads under my thing. I wrestle with gauntlets on. So I remember when I just bought the gear and put it all together, I was like, yeah, this is the look. This is the look I've got to go for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it hard to source that stuff?
So I think it was a little bit harder to begin with, because when I was talking to the guys in the dojo, I was like, oh, where do you get your gear from? And they were recommending me all these people and stuff. And I was going on, they was seeing the, that sort of Rey Mysterio style, and then I was like, it's not really what I'm looking for, and I'd go on, and, I'd see, those briefs and whatever, and I was like, I can't really say I'm a Viking and go wrestle in briefs, like, it would be a wee bit weird. So I actually went on the Etsy and sourced quite a lot of it. So,
Okay.
so I think I've basically sourced everything there, apart from my knee pads and stuff, which I just got off Amazon and that. But Etsy is the way to go for me, especially with that sort of gimmick. It's difficult to put across the a gear designer. Yeah, I need this sort of the opposite of what you normally do. I need it really baggy. I need it enough room to move around in, and I need it to look as historically accurate as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And like, so people were telling you sort of had that Viking aesthetic. Have you just made the decision to lean into that, or are you working with, promoters? Have they sort of said, right, we want you to do a Viking gimmick, or do you sort of have creative control on your gimmick, and you can kind of decide what direction that heads in?
Yeah, I mean, especially in LIPW, it would have quite a bit of creative control over it. Obviously, if I go elsewhere, sometimes I'm a good guy. Sometimes, a lot of the times, I'm a real bad guy. But in terms of creative control and that, I would say that the owner of that, Nathan, he's really, really good. At, if he trusts you, he'll let you, push the gimmick in a way that would benefit the company. Obviously, if you go too drastic in that, he'll sort of rein it in a wee bit. But
Hmm.
he gave me full creative control with it. I'm so thankful for it. So I am. He told when I told him about me, originally going for that idea, he was like, "Yeah, definitely do it, definitely do it."
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. And like, I was actually speaking to a friend of mine about this week, and we were talking about wrestling styles and the importance of the gimmick influencing the style, or the style being influenced by the gimmick. So, I've never seen you wrestle, but I'm assuming you're not a high flyer. It doesn't quite fit the gimmick.
Not at
Um,
all.
but so, how have you let the gimmick influence your style? Because I could imagine a Viking being a bit more, I don't know, stiffer and a bit more
Yeah.
aggressive. And how would you describe your wrestling style?
I think it's a bit. I mean, the word that I would use is a bit sort of chaotic and barbaric in the sense of there's times where it's a lot of suplexes, slams, that sort of thing. But then there's times where it's just mauling people on the ground basically for a couple of minutes. But I am wanting to add like one or two high flying spots just to pull it out in a big match. But
Hmm.
I mean, there's an absolutely I'm quite short, so I'm 5'7",
Okay.
but I'm quite dense. So when I get up for a Hurricane Rana and stuff, there's some people who just cannot hold that weight. So they
Yeah.
can't, and get up to do a Hurricane Rana, and you can feel their legs shaking underneath you, and you're like, I don't really want to do this now. But definitely more chaotic, barbaric, and a bit more powerhousey, I would say.
Yeah, and who would you say your influences are in terms of wrestling styles? Is there anyone you're looking at going, yeah, I want to try and, maybe nick a few of their moves, or
Yeah.
I want to shape my style and use them as an influence?
I remember originally it was Brock Lesnar, and then I was like, it doesn't really suit the character. It
Okay.
really doesn't suit the character. I can't just go out there and German suplex someone 15 times,
Yeah.
And I was sort of struggling for that. I know that WWE had the War Raiders, so I took a bit from them, and then especially recently Jacob Fatu, someone that I've really, paid a lot of interest in,
Mm.
and I would watch all his matches. Not the, you know, I would never. Of course, you'll take things here and there, but I never want to imitate somebody. But it's always good to, sort of see the slight nuances that set him apart from, those sort of guys. I think him and Kamatonga, especially, in terms of my gimmick, are people that I would really, really, watch and, pick up wee different things here and there, how they would do their moves and stuff, just because they have that sort of style.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Jacob Fatu's just like incredible. Like I'm a
Yeah,
massive fan of
I
his.
know. I just need to learn how to do a moonsault, mate, and I'll be like, oh,
I
there we
know.
go.
Yeah.
Full
Yeah.
package, full package now.
Exactly. No, he's just incredible. I think 'cause since they've moved to Netflix, I followed it a little bit closer, and he's just someone I'm like, oh, I want to see this guy get a big push over the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
sort of couple of years,
I
and
think he will.
yeah, I think he will, and he's got a pretty good gimmick, and just he's got that X factor, I suppose. People always chat about with all areas of performing and so on. He seems to have it. So yeah, no, someone I really really like too. Was there, you touched there on like you were debating doing like a sort of supernatural character in terms of like a Bray Wyatt and
Mm.
Kane. Was there any other sort of gimmicks you sort of maybe have up your sleeve that you're like, what, down the line I kind of like to go try something like this, change it up, or yeah, maybe are you trying to
I,
save those?
I mean, it's one of those things where I'm sort of letting things naturally develop. I mean, it's really weird. At the minute over here, anyway, and even in Portugal, and that I remember when we went to Portugal. The first match that I did was a tag team match, and I was fully expecting to be the bad guy alongside my tag partner Brandon. And the first team went out there, and we expected them to get cheered, and they got booed. And then we went out and got cheered and whatever. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe this gimmick can easily switch between the two.
Mhm.
And then I found out that it really, really can. I mean, there's a match I was doing, and I remember it specifically. I remember I was just beating somebody up with a chair. And I was like, slabbering the crowd, being like, oh, do you want me to do it again? They're like, oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely, mate. And I was like, well, I can't really not do it now.
Yeah.
And they were getting up for me in that. So, I mean, I would love to do that sort of supernatural gimmick at some point. So it would. I mean, there's a lot of Viking folklore, and you've got that mythology that you can maybe delve into to do that sort of gimmick.
Mhm.
But the main reason why I remember I didn't do it is because all the masks and stuff I like were like £350. I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
I can't do that. Like, but in terms of gimmicks down the line, I mean, I haven't overly thought about it just because I'm enjoying what I'm doing so much at the minute. If something was to happen where I'd need to take a couple of months out or something, I'd definitely rebrand.
Yeah. That's interesting too. Like I think you were saying about the flexibility of the
Mhm.
gimmick and being able to sort of jump between face and heel, and
Mhm.
it's interesting wrestling in the sense too. No matter, sometimes you can plan to be one or the other, but the crowd really
Yeah.
ultimately dictates it. Like how do you sort of, you were saying there about the chair, you didn't quite get the reaction that you were maybe
Yeah.
going for. How do you, and you were saying about your background in performing arts, and
Mhm.
how do you use improv within wrestling, and how does that look in terms of in ring performance and sort of the characterization too?
I think it works well for me just having that background. And if I was in a match, unless it's against someone a lot more experienced, I would typically try and lead it and just sort of say, go off, what the crowd are doing, and if they change a certain way, we need to react to it and that. In terms of improv and stuff, it's more so if you're in there with someone more experienced who has been in front of crowds more often and knows how to work them. But I mean, sometimes it just happens where you could be the nastiest piece of work ever, and they love it. I mean, once again, I only talk about Portugal so much because the crowd were amazing there.
Yeah,
I was grabbing drinks off people and telling them that the beer tasted like piss and everything, and they absolutely loved it. So they did.
yeah,
Whereas over here, I think that's one thing that Ireland could definitely do with is the crowds getting up a wee bit more. Sometimes people are a wee bit nervous. They
mhm,
start cheering or booing, and then after the first couple of matches when the kids really get into it, that's when they'll start doing it.
yeah,
Um, but our next show has a bar at it, so I'm hoping that helps people listen
yeah,
to it.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
does.
Fair enough, fair enough. So how many times have you been to Portugal to wrestle that
I've
promotion?
only been once, but I'm hoping to get out towards the end of April here. So I am,
Okay.
and then I know that at the start of April when our Mullen Road show is, I'll be talking to Andy Roberts and that about going over to Scotland and that's a lot easier of a journey than going to Portugal. Like,
Yeah. And there's that close relationship between the promotion you're sort of based with and this Portuguese
yeah,
promotion.
yeah.
Do you know any of the background in that? Because that seems like a quite unique partnership.
I know that one of the main guys in NIPW, DD Crooks, he would be friends with a lot of those guys out there, and I just remember him inviting me over, and I wrestled a guy called the Brew in that, who was really intense in that, and then I got to meet Red Eagle, he's known as. He's sort of the real big face in Portugal.
Okay.
But in terms of that promotion, I don't know a huge amount about it, only because when we were over there, we helped set up the ring on the Friday night, trained a wee bit. On the Saturday, we did a seminar with Cheeseburger from TNA, and
Okay.
then got straight into the show, and then we had a show on the Sunday. So I didn't get a huge amount of time to get talking to Red. He would own that promotion, he would be booking the shows and stuff. So I wouldn't know a huge amount about it, but the setup out there is great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it seems very interesting, like that connection. As I said, it seems quite unique,
yeah.
and you were saying there, so your match out there was a tag match.
So I had a tag team match on my first night, and then the
Okay.
second night, I was the NXT Junior Heavyweight Champion at the time. So I then defended that belt against a guy called the Brew, and then I was so used to being a bad guy. I remember going out into Portugal getting that reaction. I was like, well, maybe I'll be a face now.
Yeah,
I'll be a
yeah,
face now. People cheering you is actually quite nice instead of getting called all the names under the sun. I was like, this is absolutely brilliant.
yeah, yeah.
And then I remember out there, I turned on my tag team partner Brandon after the match because he cost us it, and then the booze and that happened, and I was like, I don't know, I quite like getting booed. I quite like getting booed
Yeah.
here. But the second night I went out and I wrestled a Brew, and that was one of the best matches I've ever had. I think our styles really worked well together, and it ended in me cheating to get the win to defend my belt and stuff. But that guy Brew, I'm not sure if he still does it, but he's one of the best people I've ever worked with.
Mhm. What sort of stood out about him? Was it just he was a good guy, or
Intensity, intensity.
intensely? Okay.
I think over here as well. Obviously, you don't want to be clocking people constantly, but you know, when he was hitting me and doing different things to me, and that it felt. I know it's obviously scripted, and trust me, it does hurt, but it felt more real and it looked more
Yeah.
real because he was that intense with it. And then when someone brings that intensity, you sort of want to match it.
Mhm.
Whereas sometimes you get in the ring with people who are a bit, when I say softer, maybe they've got back problems or something, and you have to go lighter on them, and it just doesn't look as good. Whereas I think me and him had that level of intensity where everyone was like, "Oh, these guys genuinely want to kill each other."
Yeah. No, I think that believability is like a big.
Yeah.
It's a big part of it, like, obviously, as you say, the whole thing's predetermined,
Yeah.
and scripted,
Hmm.
but you still need, there should still be, I suppose, a pressure, in making it look
Yeah.
believable as
Especially
well.
with those smaller crowds. I mean, in WWE, you can sort of get away with it because
Mm.
there's 18,000 people there, and as long as the first few rows, can hear the impact of certain things, you might get away with it. They get more of a chance to call things, whatever. But if you're wrestling in front of 60 people or something, you've really got to make sure that they come back. If it can only hold 60 people, you
Yeah.
need to make sure that those people see your match and go, I want to see that guy again, and buy
Yeah.
tickets again.
What's it? Yeah, I think that's probably a big challenge too, isn't it? For
Yeah.
like the smaller independent promotions, you got to get the audience wanting to come
Yeah.
back, like,
Yeah.
so that's obviously going to be part of it. I've no listen. I have no in-ring experience, like, but I'd be interested to hear like the dynamics of a one-on-one match versus a tag match. Is what sort of dynamics are you trying to deal with there that make it more challenging or make it easier? That'd be pretty cool to hear.
In terms of the structures and that of a match, I usually find that they both sort of follow the same structure. The only thing that with a tag match is that obviously you don't want to go towards their corner, and it's usually just about isolating one person. And the heels, tag in, beat someone up a bit, tag the other person in, beat them up, continue beating them up. Then there's usually a bit of a hope spot where they go for that big desperate tag, and you pull them back. And it's all about, I think wrestling's all about creating that roller coaster effect of bringing the audience up, taking them down, bringing them up, taking them down. But in terms of dynamics in that, I don't overly think there's a huge difference, but I think it more depends on the crowd more than
Mhm.
anything. You need to sort of listen to see what the crowd are getting up for, and if they're getting up for a certain person, you know, that's where you want that improv to happen. If I'm working with someone and they're real big baby face, I'm choking them out or something, and the crowd are getting up for them and they're not moving. It's like this is the point where you're supposed to give the crowd what you want, and then we bring them down again when I cut you off. But I've mainly been a singles wrestler, so I've been in things like I've been in a gauntlet match. I've been in a last man standing match that was no DQ, and I got tack bumped for it. And it absolutely sucked. But I know I'm actually doing a tag team match on the 1st of April here, and funnily enough, it's the exact same tag team match that happened in Portugal. So,
Okay.
so I'm looking forward to it though. I always like getting the odd new thing thrown at me in the sense of if I do single matches for a period of time, uh, regular single matches that is, you want maybe a new idea thrown in there, such as the last man stand, just because, you know, well, for me personally, I like variety.
Yeah, yeah. No, it makes sense. And like again, like I'd be interested to know too. So when they are partnering you with someone, is it just an availability thing that's based
It can be,
on?
yeah, yeah, it can be. But I know that for this tag team match that we're doing, we're using the match that we had in Portugal as a bit of a storyline. So we are. So there's a bit of a story going into it. But it really depends on where you're working. Sometimes you're literally just thrown in there with a random guy, and you're like, right, what do we do?
Yeah,
Sometimes you can gel together really well, and sometimes you both got completely different ideas, and it doesn't work as well. But you know that's what happens sometimes. Some indie shows I think are great, and then I think the indie shows that aren't a set promotion and would tour here, there, everywhere, in the sense of just getting local talent and stuff can be a bit detrimental, I think.
Mm.
Um, but of course, I mean, bookings are bookings.
Yeah, what's that like?
Yeah,
And why don't like you said there you've wrestled for some done some really rubbish
yeah,
shows like without maybe naming names or locations. We don't want to turn it into a game of guess who. But is there any sort of horror stories or even some comical stories where you just came away at the end of the night you
yeah.
and driving home you thought, oh my god, I can't believe that just I've done that.
There's two that sort of slightly stick in my mind. One of them, I remember the guy that I was wrestling. Um, he was a bit greener, so like I totally get stage fright and stuff can happen. But we went through the match, and when we got out there, he just forgot basically everything that we went through, and we went through it loads and loads of times. And I was like, right, okay. So I remember that he had quite long hair, thankfully. So if I had him in a headlock or whatever, I could get down and sort of tell him what to do, like, oh, take off here and start to go for your comeback, and he just wouldn't listen. Or maybe it was just this, the equipment
Yeah.
got the better of him and stuff. But I knew that that's one of the worst matches I had, because the guy, it looked really weird, because there was parts where I was after I beat him up or whatever, I'd get him into that, I'd get him into like a rear naked and be like, it's time for the comeback here, time for the comeback, and he wouldn't feed up or whatever and go for it. So I remember like sort of
Okay.
bringing him up slightly and going, okay, shoot off the ropes here. This is where you do this. This is where you do this, and nothing happened and whatever. So I remember I just had to call it there and be like, okay, you're taking the finish
Yeah.
now, taking the finish. And then it depends on the promoters and stuff as well, but you can get those like I would prefer wrestling for shows that, when I say have a more adult themed, I don't want to go too kid
Yeah.
friendly with it. You can get some shows that you go to and they're really really kid orientated, like I remember one of the promotions that I did, and one of the shows that I did, the and I only noticed it because I went on to my Cage Match profile and stuff. The guy got my name completely wrong, and I remember when I was entering, he called me the complete wrong name, and I was like, yeah, you can't even learn the guy's name that's on your show. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you're sort of doing yourself out of somebody to work for there.
Yeah. Yeah, that must be really infuriating.
Yeah.
Like I could imagine. So just going back to that scenario with the guy who was pretty
Mhm.
green,
Mhm.
what's that look like after? Like you've called the finish,
Mhm.
you just go back into the changing rooms and
Mhm.
so on. Is this guy oblivion to what's just happened, or is he like completely
No, I mean
apologetic?
that guy was very apologetic, which I was like, listen, mate, it can happen sometimes. But I remember when I got back there, I was quite annoyed, but I wasn't annoyed in a sense of the match didn't go well. I sort of offered to go against this guy because I'd wrestled quite a lot of the top guys, and when I was up and coming, so I was like, I'll do a favor to the owner here, and I'll be like, just put me in there with one of the newer guys, and give the top guys matches against each other, because they've done their dues in helping me and a couple of other people, in their eyes. So I'll do it now. So I totally understood that things happen, whatever. But I remember I got backstage and I was like, I'm really annoyed because I put my trust and offered to work with this guy who obviously hadn't been training enough, and hadn't you know enough experience maybe to do the match that we had planned, but he told me that he remembered everything and he was happy with everything. So, I mean, once you go out into the curtain, I mean, there's nothing really that you can do.
Mhm.
But it was more so for him as well, because if he had put on a good performance and that, who knows where it might have led for him in the sense of matches coming up in the future. But you need to sort of work with people who will also, if someone looks crap in a match, it's going to make the match look crap, and it's also going to make you
Yeah.
look crap. So I mean, it was okay. Thankfully, it wasn't like a big massive show or anything, so I wasn't too bad with it. But I remember when I went through the curtain and stuff, I was like, oh, I was a bit annoyed, but then, you know, there's nothing really you can do.
Yeah, and is there any like occasions where, because it's interesting to hear the psychology. I know, like I have a decent sporting background, and like when you play, like say a game and you play really, really well, your
Yeah,
confidence, you could ride that confidence wave for like months if you're very, very lucky. But then it might just take one game then where you're not confidence takes a real hit, and then you have successive matches then where your confidence really low and you're not your self beliefs not where you want it to be. Does that happen within wrestling, like the confidence thing or self doubt? In
yeah.
terms of matches and stuff.
I think it can. And I'm not being big headed when I say this. It hasn't happened for me yet, but I've seen it happen to guys. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's really weird to say it, but in 2 months' time, especially if it's a smaller show. I mean, there's nobody's overly gonna remember it in
Mhm.
that sense, you know. But I always, go in with the mindset of, just do your best each time that you go out there. I mean, after that match that I was talking about there, I went out and wrestled a guy called Stevie Fee and had one of the best matches
Mhm.
of my career. And then from there, went on and did a match that was quite good. And then I wrestled Callum Black from OTT um, there last weekend and had one of the best matches of my career. So I mean, it's more so about just I sort of understand in the sense of because I've done. I think maybe my experience with performing arts and that helps in the sense of sometimes you go out there and you forget lines. It's totally understandable, and you don't have your best performance, and it's just about not beating yourself up. If you just
Mhm.
if you have a bad match or whatever, just go to the gym, keep training, and just aim to improve, get 1% better each time that you go out there.
Yeah, that's it. Like, and I suppose that's like all athletes in all
Yeah,
sports, if you want to consider wrestling a sport, but or even performing arts too. Like, what separates the good from the
yeah,
world class is going to be that mentality, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
and being able to overcome adversity.
Hmm.
I think is really important. Like, so, listen, I'll not keep you too much longer.
No worries.
I know you've got, yeah, you're probably a busy man, and you got stuff going on your Saturday
Relatively
too.
busy. I'm going up. It's really weird. I'm actually going up after this to go shoot some promo content in the local news.
Okay.
So hopefully,
Yeah.
people don't think it's like for a calendar or something when they see a shirtless Viking man up there with his best mate taking pictures of him.
Jeez. Oh, that'd be an interesting
I
thing to
know.
stumble
I
across.
know.
Who was sort of the guys that got you into wrestling? So you spoke there, but you mentioned Brock Lesnar and
Mhm.
things, and I'm just thinking about the time frame we probably would have been getting into it around the same, the same era. Who was the guys that you were just like, massive
Yeah.
fan of those?
I used to, and it was before I really went to the gym and put on sizes and stuff. I was like, oh, Rey Mysterio, I'm gonna be that guy.
Yeah.
But now that I've been to the gym and I'm the size I am, I'm like, I'm never gonna be that guy. And then I remember when I was watching it. Obviously everybody loved the Undertaker. I really loved Carlito back in the day.
Yeah.
I thought, I mean, if you can get over a gimmick that's just about eating an apple, you're pretty talented, like,
Yeah, that's true.
And then Batista was a big one, Edge, and then I remember that 2008 to 2010 Randy Orton. I think it was where he was bald and what. Oh,
Mm.
that guy was a menace to society.
Yeah,
Like, so
yeah.
I absolutely love that guy.
Yeah, it's interesting there too, just going back to Carlito. Like, I feel like Carlito for like a lot of people, for me, I know is he was like, cause we were quite young at that time, but he was like the first heel that I was like, he's pretty cool. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
he's
he
very
was.
cool. Like,
He
you
was
know.
like his whole gimmick is just about like basically spitting in the face of people who don't want to be cool. And I
Aye.
remember as like being 9, 10 years old, being like, yeah, that's definitely someone to that I'm gonna follow. I'm literally gonna spit in the face of people who don't want to be cool now. So I am.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was great. Like, and do you have like a Mount Rushmore? Maybe like a top 4 or 5 wrestlers that just of all time you think it's very subjective,
Yeah,
but just people you would put on that list.
yeah. Stone Cold has to be up there. I think he has to be on everybody's list. I mean, that guy got so over so quick. I mean,
Mhm.
all it took was one saying, and that guy was the face of the company. I think John Cena would be up there as well, just in terms of the longevity. And then it does usually get tough around this part. I'd have to go Undertaker, Kane, and then I think Kane's really underrated,
Yeah.
especially back in the day. I know that like 99 to '02 Kane where he had the mask and stuff. I mean that guy put nightmares into me.
Mm.
Obviously, I didn't start watching wrestling until I was a wee bit older, but I remember going back and watching all the old episodes and being like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this guy's terrifying." And then a lot of people were a bit upset when he removed the mask and stuff, but I still think he got over and he did everything the company asked of him, no matter how weird, no matter how creepy in that. There's a lot of storylines that guy was involved in where you look back and go, yeah, that is vile. Some of the stuff that they're getting him to do, but he did it.
Yeah.
And I think in today's age he'd maybe get away with it more. But I actually think it suited his character really, really well. A lot of the stuff that he was doing, and I think his in-ring ability was second to none. I don't think he gets enough praise. And then if I was to put another person on there, I'd maybe go for. It's probably it's probably a bit early to say, but I think Roman Reigns at the minute probably has to
Okay.
be up there.
Interesting.
I think just I know that Drew McIntyre carried a lot over the COVID era and stuff, but I think since Roman Reigns has been back, it's it's a I think it's a bit cringy to say, but he does have that aura about him. Like when he shows up
Mm.
somewhere, everybody pays attention. His in ring work has got so much better, and his promos are second to none now in terms of just how
Yeah.
good they are. And I think that whole Bloodline Cody Rhodes storyline was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, that was really, really good. And as you say, like, come back to that idea of the X Factor, like he just has it. Like some people just have it,
Yeah,
and
he didn't
um,
know for a long time.
oh, that's right though. That
I
is right.
remember, I can't remember what Royal Rumble it was. I remember that when it was uncool and stuff, I would stick the odd thing on. I know it's the one where The Rock comes in, and everybody was booing the life out of him, and
Mm.
everybody hated him. And it just took him that time of being away from the company, rebranded himself, and he came in. And I think Paul Heyman probably really helped, but
Oh, big time, yeah.
what he's been able to do since then is unbelievable. Like he deserves to be where he is because, I mean, he did great work in the Shield. He had that bump. He took time out, and he came back and reinvented himself. And I think he's definitely up there for me.
Oh yeah, I think like there's real parallels between his. Well, I know maybe it seems obvious, but between him and The Rock's career in the
Oh
sense
yeah,
that they were really getting pushed as these like faces, but
yeah,
people there was always the potential there, and just reinventing himself
yeah.
has really put them over. Like, um, do you remember? I'm going to ask you just 2 more questions.
That's okay.
I'd be interested to hear this. Do you remember the first wrestle match you ever saw?
Oh, the first wrestling. The earliest one that I can remember in terms of um, watching it. It was back in the day where like SmackDown cards and that used to be absolutely stacked. And I remember it was a SmackDown of Rey Mysterio versus The Undertaker,
Okay.
and it was in my granny's house. We used to sort of wait until Saturdays, go round to my granny's, get a chippy and that, and then stick on Raw followed by SmackDown. But it was on Sky Sports then, and obviously because it wasn't as big here, it would just skip out random points of the match. But I remember watching that match live, and being like, "Oh, that's unbelievable, unbelievable!" Like the fact that I know that Rey Mysterio won as well, and I was like, "Oh, I can be that guy. I can definitely be
Yeah.
that guy." And then the first one that I watched live, I remember that I went. It was when Kane was still wrestling, because I remember that I got a photo in that briefly with him after the show. I think it was maybe 2007 or that, when they were in the Odyssey. And then yeah, I remember that Kane won his match in that, because he was my favourite wrestler at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's cool. I think for me, nostalgia is such a big part of wrestling. Like, so I love hearing those little moments because I don't know, there's so much, as I say, nostalgia and
Yeah.
innocence attached to it. That's just,
Oh yeah,
that's
I
what it's
mean,
all
that
about.
under me was completely blind to the fact of what Kane was doing. A lot of the time was very illegal and very frowned upon. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh no, but he's big and scary. So I mean, and he's beating people up. So, and then you go back and watch the storylines and you go, oh,
It's a
that's
bit uncomfortable, like,
yeah, a bit
yeah.
uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah, no, there's something, ignorance is bliss, as they say, like,
yeah,
Um, Listen, you're still fairly new to the business. You're still very young in terms of a wrestler. What's your future aspirations and future ambitions?
In terms of future ambition and stuff, obviously it's to reach the top. But it's a very crowded industry. It's a very difficult industry to break out in. I'd love to get on OTT in the next couple of years. That's the top promotion over here. I'd love to maybe do a couple of tours in England, a couple of tours in Scotland or in the British Isles. I'd love to get over to a couple of more European countries in that in the next couple of years. So it's mainly just about expanding my knowledge, expanding those connections, and just wrestling as much as I can. Really,
Yeah, no, perfect. Just try and take as far as you can.
absolutely.
And listen, we wish you all the best.
Very much so. Thank you.
So we'll end it there, folks. Again, Halfdan, Joe, really, really grateful that you took the time to come on and have a conversation. I think that was really
Yeah,
enjoyable.
absolutely, mate.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And if I'm bigger in a couple of years, mate, we'll do it again.
100%. We'll follow up. I'll hold
Absolutely.
you to that. I'll hold you to
Absolutely.
that. So, folks, that is another episode of Face and Frill. Thank you for listening. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, tune in for more episodes in the future.